Right, as the UK mourns the loss of Prince Philip and all the sugar-coated rhetoric that was spewed forth from the media, and whilst one must pay their respects to the family of anyone who's died, forgive me if I don't shed any tears for the racist Greek. The world has yet to hear the real story of Philip, of how he and Charles plotted to kill Elizabeth because she wouldn't sign off on sovereignty papers. Alleged links to Jimmy Savile that was denied to the public knowledge by the gutless Scotland Yard group, who were investigating Jimmy Savile and others in the 1990s, but closed it as the links to it ended at the palace. Some people will remember him as an out-and-out racist, particularly against Asians. And the fact of the matter is, as pointed out on SOTT.net, Philip was an immigrant who spent his whole life on welfare and scrounged off the people to live a lavish lifestyle in a role that he was not suitable to or for the people of the UK. Russia, according to the Portal people, has upped its sabre-rattling in Eastern Europe and the Arctic, a move that has put the Biden administration on alert. And in the past 2 weeks, Moscow has moved to test Washington and its allies on land, in the air and at sea with a build-up of military equipment in eastern Ukraine, military flights near Alaskan airspace and submarine activity in the Arctic. And according to the Pentagon, who are just itching for a war at the moment, I think we've been very clear about threats that we see from Russia across domains. We're taking them very seriously, all whilst ignoring that the Pentagon are part of a group, including NATO, who are marching forward across Europe and threatening Russia. It only applies one way, you see, in childish games. Now, the Defense Department is overly observant of Russian activity after fighting resumed between Moscow-backed separatists and Ukrainian soldiers in eastern Ukraine, which ended the ceasefire the two groups had made last summer. 20 Ukrainian soldiers have been killed in the skirmishes since the start of this year, and the two sides have been fighting since 2004, when Moscow seized and annexed Crimea from Ukraine, a conflict that Kiev asserts has killed 14,000 people since its start. Now, Russian jets and bombers have been frequently flown near Allied airspace, forcing NATO jets to scramble to respond 10 times on Monday alone. And in addition, in late March, 3 Russian nuclear ballistic missile submarines simultaneously broke through several feet of ice in the Arctic in a military drill, and a maneuver that comes as the Kremlin has moved to raise its defences in the Arctic. Russia's aggressive actions have prompted US European Command, that's a new one, to raise its alert status to highest level, and the activity in Ukraine in particular has prompted Latex Man, top national security leaders, to call their Ukrainian counterparts and other leaders in the region. Now, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Mark Milley, on Wednesday spoke by phone with the Ukraine Chief of General Staff, Ruslan Komchak, as well as Russia's top officer, General Valery Gerasimov. But a day later, Defense Secretary Lloyd called his Iranian counterpart, Andrei Taran, to discuss the regional security issue and condemn recent escalations of Russian aggressive and provocative actions in the eastern Ukraine. And the National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan last week also spoke with Ukrainian counterpart, as did the Secretary of State Antony Blinken, who said he discussed ways of strengthening security cooperation with the Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba, and all leaders have pledged that Washington would stand by Kiev. Yet again, more childlike grandstanding by the toy soldiers in offices. Yes, you with the badges on your shoulder. Toy soldiers, the lot of you. You know, wouldn't it be great if all the generals just went to war and punched hell out of each other and saved people's lives for their own stupidity? But the point is, airspace should be available to everyone. Who gave anyone the right to claim our airspace? It belongs to everyone. Why is it always the militaries blocking airspace, land access and rights, given we the people pay for all their hardware, software, equipment, lands and bases? And the point is that Ukraine was part of Russia until certain banking groups and clowns decided otherwise. And that issue is between Russia and Ukraine, and no other country should be involved in it. Now, can you imagine if the roles were reversed, the outcry if a differing but similar situation happened in America, whereby the Mexican buildup of troops around California, Arizona, New Mexico and Texas to reclaim part of their former lands? What would the reaction be to that? Because if the Americans go up in arms over that, then they should understand the Russians with Ukraine. But then if Ukraine wasn't strategic and didn't have mineral and gas resources, would it be of any interest? The answer is no. Lloyd Austin, being a busy man, trying to kickstart World War III, it seems. The US Defence Chief is due to meet with Netanyahu and Gantz in Israel about the engineered nuclear crisis surrounding Iran. So I looked into Lloyd Austin's background to find the dot connector. That always seems to lead back to Israeli connections, and I found this. Austin joined the board of Raytheon Technologies, a military contractor, in April 2016, and as of October 2020, his Raytheon stock holdings were worth roughly $500,000, and his compensation, including stock, totaled $1.4 million. 4 years. That item alone should disturb Americans most, on top of his lavish salary these military groups pay. Within 4 years, he has gained $500,000 in stock and compensation of $900,000. 4 years for working for the death cult. And on September 2017, he was appointed to Nucor's board of directors. Another payday. In May of 2018, he was appointed as an independent director on the board of Tenet Healthcare. He also, in his spare time, you'd think the US Defence Chief was a full-time job, clearly not. He operates a consulting firm and has been a partner at Pine Island Capital, an investment company with which Antony Blinken and Michelle Flournoy are affiliated. Antony Blinken, like Austin, is a new leader as Secretary of State. Of course, Antony is born in and born to also. Now, Michelle Flournoy is a Council of Foreign Relations member, works with another military contractor, Booz Allen Hamilton, and not to be left out of the equation, as where there is skullduggery, this group, like a steaming turd, is always at the centre of the toilet bowl. Flournoy is on the CIA's External Advisory Board as well. In a week where Bernie Madoff, the major player in a And another Ponzi scheme died, allegedly. Perhaps he took the same route across the Atlantic Channel or the Atlantic Ocean as Epstein, who knows. And it emerged that a Los Angeles actor was the mastermind of a $690 million Ponzi scheme that bilked investors who thought their money would finance distribution rights for movies that would run on HBO and Netflix. Zachary Joseph Horowitz, who went by Zach Avery as an actor, was arrested on Monday and charged with wire fraud, according to the Los Angeles U.S. Attorney's Office. And I guess with a name like that, I don't have to reveal he's born too. Now, the Security and Exchange Commission also sued Mr. Horowitz and his firm 1INMM Capital LLC in civil court over the alleged scam, which it says involved an elaborate plan to portray efforts to sell film licensing rights, primarily in Latin American markets. Just goes on and on and on. Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo defended a controversial privacy technique being used by the U.S. Census Bureau in the 2020 census, a method the agency promised would only make small changes to actual numbers in counts of racial and ethnic groups. Now, the technique called differential privacy adds mathematical noise or errors to the data to obscure any given individual's identity while still providing statistically valid information. And the Bureau officials say the change is needed to prevent data miners from matching individuals to confidential details that have been rendered anonymous in the massive data released expected as early as August. And they said it will be applied to race, age, and other demographic information in geographic areas within each state. What is the point of doing a census if dodgy bureaucrats are going to fudge the figures to fulfill an agenda? Why are they even being allowed to do this? Again, there's no accountability. That's where the activist team in the communal gatherings can have an effect in the future. Increasing taxes on the wealthy and corporations could help the global economy rebound. Yeah, right. And that's according to officials at the IMF, who said it could level playing fields. Now, this further cements the IMF shift towards progressive economics. I love the way they word things. As wealth taxes grow in popularity, and lifting taxes on wealthy individuals and corporations could improve the global rebound from the scamdemic recession, according to the IMF. New stimulus and an improved rate of vaccination led the IMF to raise its global forecast earlier in the week. The global growth forecast, I should say, but the organisation is already looking beyond the initial rebound. Governments will eventually need to retract their fiscal support to avoid possible debt risks, and balancing stimulus with austerity will be a key challenge in the coming years. Austerity indeed. And reforming both domestic and international taxes can help bring about a more equitable and environmentally friendly economy, according to the IMF. Or, here's a common sense solution. The IMF could just stop raping countries with their fake loans, designed not to be repaid and to steal the resources of the countries they have forced into taking those loans. Well, there's a novel idea. Roberta S. Jacobson, former ambassador to Mexico, whom Latex Man chose as his border czar on the National Security Council, will step down at the end of the month, she said on Friday, even as the administration struggles to confront a surge of migrants at the nation's southwestern border. Now, Miss Jacobson, who was born in and born to, who had been described as one of Biden's administration's key players in dealing with the governments in the Northern Triangle area of Central America, she had praised Biden's efforts to repair and recast the nation's immigration system after 4 years under Donald Trump. Newsflash: they will never fix it. It's an agenda. And America is not interested in humanitarian support for these people. It is a cartel racketeering system designed for gangsters and fraudsters, and also brown envelopes in Congress. That's what's going on. The majority of people brought into this country are for rogue programs, and no government has made any attempt to fix that, including Trump. They never even charged Eric Holder for gun running, which is part of that racketeering. Now, Ms. Jacobson said that her appointment as a special assistant to the president and as border coordinator in the White House was always intended to only last for 100 days. Believe that. A period that will expire at the end of April when she intends to leave government. Now, the timing of her departure is nonetheless striking, coming in the middle of the administration's efforts to reduce the flow of immigration from Honduras, Guatemala, and also El Salvador. And Miss Jacobson had been charged with leading that effort when her appointment was announced this year. Well, she's done her job. Flooded the country with gangsters, stolen children, and the harvesting child slave labour, the sex cult and body parts industry continues, it seems. Israel says it will not cooperate with an investigation by the International Criminal Court into possible war crimes in the occupied territories. And in a letter to the court, Israel says the ICC is acting without authority in carrying out the probe. And the ICC gave Israel and the Palestinians who instigated the action until Friday to respond. And the issue threatens to further damage already strained relations between the two sides. And only last month, Israeli authorities cancelled the VIP travel pass of the Palestinian foreign minister on his return to the Israeli-occupied West Bank from talks with the ICC chief prosecutor Fatou Bensouda. How childish is that? Now, the ICC has a duty to explore whether there are sufficient grounds to open a probe when a new member joins, as the Palestinians did in January 2015. And last month, Ms. Bensouda announced that the court would proceed and investigate possible crimes committed by both Israelis and Palestinians in the West Bank, Gaza, and East Jerusalem since the 13th of June 2014. Good luck with that. The problem is, Israelis think they are the law. The Talmud is the law. Their religion is the law. And it's high time the rest of the world created our own law and told these Hebrew Anunnakis, this is our law, and if you don't like it, piss off and leave the planet from whence you came. Pfizer is threatening to delay further shipments of vaccines to Israel over a delay in payments, reportedly warning that the Jewish state could go back to the back of the line if it doesn't pay up. Pfizer said Monday it had completed all vaccine deliveries to Israel under its initial agreement and was working on a new deal to supply more doses to the Jewish state. Now, the company is currently working with the Israeli government to update the agreement to supply additional vaccines to that state. And while this work continues, shipments may be adjusted, but a payment delay reportedly sparked a harsh warning from the vaccine maker. Now, Channel 12 said the company warned Israel this week that if the payments do not come in, the doses will be shipped elsewhere. So not only do they not observe laws, they refuse to pay when they choose also. It's all about the shekels. Ain't that right, Rabbi Finkelstein? So that story was ran on April the 9th. There was a swift Israeli response to that story just one day later. The South African variant of the coronavirus is notably more adept at breaking through the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine than other variants are, Israeli scientists have magically found in a first-of-its-kind real-world study. Israel has used the Pfizer vaccine almost exclusively to vaccinate millions of its citizens with a version by mode RNA based on similar innovative mRNA technology used minimally. And a team from Tel Aviv University and Clalit Healthcare Organization sequenced the swabs of 150 Israelis who tested positive for COVID-19 despite having been vaccinated. Oops. So it was okay given all the Israeli people Pfizer when the Israelis were not paying. But a day later, when they're asked to pay the bill, suddenly Pfizer's a pile of shit and that vaccine doesn't work. That whole piece is to force Pfizer to back down, or they will use their media machine to discredit them. It's all very faction-based, isn't it? We warned of a ramp-up of an event that would be required by the old system. Now their COVID BS has fallen apart. The Ukraine is one, Syria another, and Iran the third, all involving one group, the Israeli junta. Now the Israeli elites, who own most of the world with their greed and harvesting culture, are under big pressure now to push their agendas, and they do wish to achieve it by starting World War III. Now, I will have a detailed op-ed piece of how, why, and their plans in next week's show. But an explosion this week has damaged an Iranian cargo ship anchored off Yemen's Red Sea coast, which is actually nowhere near Israel, those who are not geographically challenged, that is allegedly used by the Revolutionary Guards for spying, really, according to Five Eyes agencies only, plus the hidden one, which is Mossad. And Iran's foreign ministry has confirmed the blast that targeted the Saviz on Tuesday, and thankfully it caused no casualties and was under investigation. And the vessel was a civilian ship stationed there to secure the region against pirates, he added. And the New York Times reported that Israel had told the US it attacked the Saviz. Now, Israeli officials did not comment, but it's the latest in a series of attacks between Israel and Iranian-owned ships, and they both blame each other. Then on Saturday, Iran announced that it started up advanced IR-6 and IR-5 centrifuges that enriches uranium more quickly in what is said to be a new breach of its undertakings under the troubled 2015 nuclear agreement. It also said it had begun mechanical tests on an even faster nuclear centrifuge, and the output of Iran's IR-9 centrifuge, when operational, would be 50 times quicker than the first Iranian centrifuge, the IR-1. Iran's nuclear program is also developing IR-8 centrifuges. Now, President Hassan Rouhani officially inaugurated the cascades of 164 IR-6 centrifuges and 30 IR-5 devices at Iran's Natanz uranium enrichment plant in a ceremony for National Nuclear Technology Day, which was broadcast by the state television. And the broadcast aired no images of the cascade, but broadcast a link with engineers at the plant who said they had introduced uranium hexafluoride gas to the cascades after receiving the order from Rouhani. The broadcast aired no images of the cascade, but the story was written and indeed attributed to the agencies. Oops. You see, agencies make statements and never provide facts is why. One day later, a nuclear facility in Iran was hit by a terrorist act a day after it unveiled new advanced uranium centrifuges, a top nuclear official says. He did not say who was to blame, but urged the international community to deal with this nuclear terrorism. The Israeli media suggests the incident was a result of an Israeli cyber attack. Now, last year, a fire broke out at Natanz underground facility, which the authorities allege was the result of cyber sabotage. Both of those events were done by Mossad and their insane attempts to launch World War III for their one world agenda.